What did David do while he lived among the Philistines? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 1 Samuel on Walking Through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 1 Samuel 27, verses 1 to 12. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to 1 Samuel 27, verse 1. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 1 Samuel chapter 27, beginning at verse 1. And David said in his heart, "Now I shall perish some day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than that I should speedily escape to the land of the Philistines, and Saul will despair of me, to seek me any more in any part of Israel. So I shall escape out of his hand." Then David arose and went over with 600 men who were with him to Achish, the son of Maoch, king of Gath. So David dwelt with Achish at Gath, he and his men, each man with his household, and David with his 2 wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the Carmelitess, Nabal's widow. And it was told Saul that David had fled to Gath, so he sought him no more. Then David said to Achish, "If I have found favor in your eyes, let them give me a place in some town in the country, that I may dwell there. For why should your servant dwell in the royal city with you?" So Achish gave him Ziklag that day. Therefore Ziklag has belonged to the kings of Judah to this day. Now the time that David dwelt in the country of the Philistines was 1 full year and 4 months. And David and his men went up and raided the Geshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites. For those nations were the inhabitants of the land from of old, as you go to Shur, even as far as the land of Egypt. Whenever David attacked the land, he left neither man nor woman alive, but took away the sheep, the oxen, the donkeys, the camels, and the apparel, and returned and came to Achish. Then Achish would say, "Where have you made a raid today?" And David would say, "Against the southern area of Judah, or against the southern area of the Jerahmeelites, or against the southern area of the Kenites." David would save neither man nor woman alive to bring news to Gath, saying, lest they should inform on us, saying, "Thus David did." And thus was his behavior all the time he dwelt in the country of the Philistines. So Achish believed David, saying, "He has made his people Israel utterly abhor him. Therefore he will be my servant forever." As we now come to chapter 27, the book is transitioning from the chase of David by Saul to the end of Saul's life, which will be found in chapter 31. Saul and David are never recorded as meeting again in this book before Saul's death. The reason for this is because of what David does here in chapter 27, which is that he goes and lives among the Philistines. The reason that David does this is because he determines that if he remains in Judah, that Saul is simply going to change his mind, attack, and possibly kill him. We do not read of David consulting the Lord on this move, nor do we see David's faith in God for deliverance that we saw at the end of chapter 26 shining through here. What this shows us is that even a man of faith isn't perfect and will make mistakes and sin from time to time. I'm not going to charge David with sinning here, but we do know back when David fled to Moab that God told him to return to Judah and remain there. And absent any further instructions by God, we have no reason to assume that God's desire for David has changed. But regardless of David's actions, David was the Lord's anointed, and so the Lord protected David even among the Philistines. But this time when David came among the Philistines and came to Achish, king of Gath, he wasn't alone. Recall back in chapter 21 that when David fled from Nob to Gath, he was basically alone and recognized by the Philistines, and so he faked being crazy so that he could escape. This time, though, David came with 600 men and his 2 wives, meaning that he was much more formidable. And of course, with so many men, they couldn't all stay at the king's house, so David requests that Achish give him some place in the country where he could dwell, and also stay out of Saul's clutches. Achish gave David the town of Ziklag, a city in the land of the Philistines, close to where Gerar would have been in the days of Abraham, and not too far from the city of Beersheba in southern Judah. The author of this section of 1 Samuel tells us that Ziklag belonged to the kings of Judah to this day, showing us not only did the Philistines not recover it, but this portion of the book was likely written not too long after the days of Solomon, when there were the kings of Israel and the kings of Judah. What was David going to do from Ziklag? Well, he needed food and provisions, which is likely why David and his men raided the land of the Geshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites. If you recall back to the days of Joshua, the Geshurites largely dwelled in Bashan, where the tribe of Manasseh was, but it also seems that some of them lived close to the Philistine territory, for they are also mentioned in Joshua 13 verse 2 as being in this area. We do not know who the Girzites were, but we do know who the Amalekites were, with these people being the remnant that remained from Saul's failed mission to utterly destroy them at the word of the Lord back in chapter 15. The peoples that David attacked lived in the southern Negev, south of Judah, all the way around to Shur, which is in present-day Saudi Arabia, and are said to have lived there from times of old, meaning before Israel conquered the Promised Land. What we must understand as well, though, is that it is likely that all these peoples were allies with the Philistines, and so David killing these people could be problematic if David wanted to remain in Achish's good graces. And so, when David went on these expeditions, he would kill all the men and women so that they couldn't report on him. But he would give some of the spoils to Achish in order to ingratiate himself to Achish. When Achish asked where he received these spoils from, David wouldn't say specifically, simply saying that he went up against the southern area of Judah, or the southern area of the Jerahmeelites, which were descendants of Judah, or the southern area of the Kenites, whose land would not only be in parts of Judah, for those who had accompanied Israel to Canaan, but also included parts of Midian. For remember, the Kenites were descendants of Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, and some remained in Midian after Israel left Mount Sinai. In this, David was being deceptive, making it seem like he was attacking Israelites, when in fact he was attacking allies of Achish. Again, we see David's lax relationship with the truth, which is not a trait of David we should emulate. Now Achish believed David and thought that David was on his side, and so David remained among the Philistines for about 16 months. And Saul, knowing that David was there, did not go after David there, lest he begin a war with the Philistines. But such a war was not going to be able to be avoided, and it will be this next war that will spell the end of Saul's reign over Israel. We'll begin to discuss it and the events that preceded, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 1 Samuel chapter 28, verses 1 to 14, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.